Good afternoon, class. My name is George Ramos, and this is my project for the CGS 3095 Fall 2021 course. My project's title is Media Piracy's Impact on the Global Economy. And now let's get right to it. So we won't go deep into what exactly media piracy is, as I'm sure we're all aware, but we will start with just the types of media that are subject to piracy. So what may initially started as music is now gone into movies, TV shows, games, softwares, applications, even ebooks are subject to piracy. This media piracy does contribute to financial loss for copyright owners as well as job loss for industries. So these copyright owners, these content providers that are building these medias and putting them out, they're seeing potential loss of revenue due to the piracy. And then certain industries, gaming industry, music industry, those supporting staff that are needed to support these creators, those jobs are being lost as well due to the piracy. For this particular report, we are analyzing three major nations, those being the United States, Russia, and India. When looking at the data from 2018 of all global piracy users, these three nations were at the top of that list, which is why they were chosen. For our ethical analysis, we will be using the theory of consequentialism, and we won't go too deep into the full details, but in a nutshell, it's really focusing on the final outcome as the determining factor if said action was ethical or unethical. So we'll look at that through that lens. For the global analysis, we'll start with technological advances have made it easier to pirate media. As internet population grew and as the technology grew and the tools became much more easier to use by the average user, piracy naturally grew. And in 2018, we've had over 190 billion page visits to websites that were hosting the pirated media. As you see on the chart on the right, these were the top three nations in 2018. And all of these numbers essentially equate to an estimated loss of $40 to $97 billion in annual revenue in the global movie industry due to piracy. And we're talking just the movie industry. So you can imagine that number is a bit larger when talking about all of the various industries, software, music, as well as literature. So our first nation we're looking at is the United States. Out of this 190 billion page visits in 2018, 17.3 billion of those were from the US. This is about a 9.1% of all traffic in that 190 were from the US. And that equates to an economic impact of an estimated amount of 30 billion per year. This is across industry. It's not specific to music, film, or TV. As a whole, it's estimated 30 billion are lost. It's not only the loss of revenue, it's also the loss of jobs. So we're looking at 560,000 were reported per year due to media piracy. In order to fight this, legislation was enacted. Initially was the No Electronic Theft Act, and this allowed criminal prosecution of individuals who engaged in copyright infringement. And then the Digital Millennium Copyright Act is what criminalized the production and dissemination of technology and devices that were intended to circumvent anti-piracy measures. So they were really going after the technology and the tools used to conduct piracy. Our next nation was Russia. Out of those 190 billion page visits, 14.5 billion were from users in Russia, and this equates to about a 7.6% of all of that pirated traffic coming from Russia. The types of media that are most pirated in Russia, and in the specific order, are games, movies, music, software, and ebooks. In order to try to fight the piracy, Russia enacted their own anti-piracy law in 2013, and this law allowed authorities to block any websites that were hosting pirated material. And as you can imagine, this anti-piracy law was met with some strong resistance from the internet population, not necessarily because they were trying to block piracy, websites, but they felt Russia was a bit or overextending a bit with the sites that they were blocking and claiming a lot of them were not even hosting pirated media. This anti-piracy law was then extended in 2015 to include also music, text, and software. So they kind of expanded the law out to provide more protection. Next on the list, lastly, was India. And out of the 190 billion page visits in 2018 to websites hosting pirated media, 9.6 billion of those were attributed to users in India. And this means an economic impact of roughly 2.5 billion per year is estimated to be caused due to media piracy in India. And that is a really big number. In order to try to fight this, legislature enacted the Copyright Act in 1957. This act protected literature, musical, artistic works, films, and sound recordings from unauthorized use. So if anyone was caught, doing anything like that, the law allowed prosecution of those individuals. The most recent law enacted by India was the National Intellectual Property Rights Policy. And this law aims to push intellectual property as a financial asset and then promote and encourage innovation. So by allowing these innovators and content creators to feel comfortable understanding that what they put out and what they create will get protected and they will be able to reap off their work, they're more inclined or more willing to put out said creative works. So this is meant to encourage that. For our ethical analysis piece, we are looking through the lens of the theory of consequentialism. And as we spoke briefly in the beginning, it's really focused on the final outcome as the main determining factor. So the intent, the means to the outcome are not taken into consideration. It really is, what happened at the end is what determines. So when looking at what the primary consequence of media piracy, it's going to be a loss of revenue. And that clearly is a negative consequence, which would in turn make media piracy unethical. The next big consequence is a loss of jobs. And again, that in itself, it's a negative consequence. There's no other way to kind of flip it. It's going to be an unethical act. There are always two sides to said token. So again, it's how you look at it. The counter argument to media piracy being unethical is that there are some positive consequences. And one of the primary positive consequences of media piracy is that it serves as a promotional vehicle to help drive up publicity. So as more people are aware of said product, they may not have thought to seek it out initially, but as it became popular, as more people are pirating and using it, it grows, and then they now become aware of it, and they could possibly become a potential customer. Another positive outcome is that it creates invisible competition, forcing media and service providers to keep prices competitive in order to compete with free. If somebody's not going to want to spend too much money or what they deem is too much for your media if they can get that same media for free elsewhere. So in conclusion, it's obvious media piracy is a global issue affecting all developed nations where media is distributed and produced. It's not, local to one nation or one certain area of the world. It is global, and as the internet population grows, there's billions of users that are accessing this media every year, and those numbers are only going to keep increasing, and it does result in billions of dollars in lost revenue and lost jobs. So ultimately, when looking at it ethically, there are negative and positive consequences with media piracy. So it depends on how you want to look at it to make that ultimate determination of if the act of media piracy in itself is an ethical or an unethical one. So thank you, and hope you guys have a great day.